Hello folks, and welcome to my first ever proper YouTube video, which is a thing I never thought I'd say, but here we are. You'll have to excuse my awkwardness and stumbling as I learn to talk to a camera, but that all comes with practice. In this video I'm going to be looking at all the talking points, all the drama, all the key takeaways from the TOCA Brands Hatch weekend, which by the time this gets out is probably a couple of weekends ago, but so be it. Didn't do one for Donington, so we're going to start here at Brands. The aim is to do one for every remaining weekend of the season. And like I said, go through touring cars, all the support package, and just generally keep you guys up to date with how the season progresses and a brief overview of each championships at each weekend. So we'll get straight into it, and where better place to start than the big boys themselves, the British Touring Car Championship. Donington was a fantastic start to the season, brilliant track, my favourite track, my local track as well. I was on Starkey's banking on Saturday for the meeting, and as always, a fantastic day of entertainment, an extra race as well, with the introduction of the qualifying race, the race to pole, as they call it. So that was a fantastic spectacle for all the fans. I was a bit unsure, really, of it going into the weekend. Unknown, don't know what to expect. But the drivers were as feisty as you'd expect them to be in any race on a Sunday. Ash Sutton showed that in the quali race at Redgate and ending up beached in the gravel trap. And the qualifying race here as well at Brands Hatch did not disappoint. So I'll get straight into it then. Starting with quali group 1, and it was Tom Ingram for Team Virtue who topped the times in that session, coming off the back of a miserable opening couple of days, really. Disqualifications galore, penalties for false start, out of position start it was at Donington, and then just issues with the car as well. Saw him not starting, I think it was race 2. He carved his way through the field in race 3 though to end and on a bit of a high, but not a strong start for the reigning champ at all. This was much better though, in quali 1. Darryl De Leon was second with the BMW, always go well around Brands Indy, of course. Ash Sutton third, Mikey Doble fourth, Tom Chilton was fifth, and Josh Cook, Sam Osborne, Lewis Selby for Napa, Chris Smiley, Aidan Moffat, underperforming for him after a promising opener at Donington, and then James Dorling 11th. He had engine issues at the early point of the meeting, so that is why James Dorling struggled so much there. Main point to take away from the first group of qualifying is the simply sublime Ash Sutton. The new Napa Ford Titanium is looking absolutely amazing. It's clearly been put together in a way where Ash can get comfortable with it. The car it's just dancing for him. It is absolutely on the limit at every bend, and Ash needs a car that can be thrown around, and it looks like it is absolutely right where he wants it right now. The team are doing a fantastic job. His pace was only 0.168 of a second off Tom Ingram, with the lowest amount of boost of anyone coming into the weekend, because he's championship leader going into it. So it means he has the least amount of boost allocated to him, and he was only 0.168 off Tom's pace in quali 1, which is absolutely insane, and again shows that him and the car are really gelling, and it's fantastic. It really is. Quali Group 2, and it was another Napa Ford Titanium. Dan Camish was fastest in that one. Ricky Collard second, and Adam Morgan for Plato Racing, and Dexter Patterson, Charles Rainford, Aaron Taylor-Smith, and Gordon Shedden. Max Buxton, Dan Rowbottom, and Nick Hamilton were that was your order for Quali Group 2. Let's talk about Ricky Collard for a brief moment. Obviously, returning to the championship after a stint in British GT, won British GT with his dad Rob in the Barwell Lamborghini. But you can just tell his heart is with touring cars. It always has been. He loves that close nature, door panel rubbing, wind mirror bending racing that touring car offers. And you could tell he's been missing it, because he's not had any other emotion but happiness, and a massive smile has been beaming from ear to ear, showing his pearly whites since the start of the year. Obviously, the deal was put together last. It's about as last minute deals come, was Ricky's. No testing in the car at all. Brandt actually saw the first time he'd driven the car in the wet, and he was still able to get very strong results out of the weekend. We'll see in a minute. In the championship needs drivers like Ricky, drivers that will not be afraid to get their elbows out and get into people. It's just hard racing, and it's so good to see characters like him on the grid. And obviously he's off the back of a podium at Donington. His third race in the car, pretty much his third stint in the car, and he got a podium. It shows A, what a top driver he is, and B, what a top Team Virtue are as well, to get him on front running pace this quickly. Plato Racing then, Dan Rowbottom down in 9th after quali Group 2. Obviously there, Plato's return, it was the most fairy tale of stories at Donington, picking up the quali race win. And it was always going to be that way, wasn't it? Let's face it, it was always going to be that way. Jason Plato, probably the biggest legend that the sport has, returning after dealing with such mental health issues. His retirement clearly catapulted him into such a dark place. For him to find the strength to be able to come out and talk about that was phenomenal, and makes you appreciate Jason, the person, behind the helmet. So seeing him back on the grid, back in the paddock, I saw him taking selfies with loads of fans at Donington in the paddock, and it's just a real buzz, a real vibe around the place, because Jason Plato is back in it. He's back in the sport, albeit as a team owner, but touring cars is in a much better place when Jason Plato is involved. That's fact. But a bit of a miserable weekend, it has to be said, particularly for Dan Rowbottom. Louise interviewed him after quali Group 2, and I believe he said that him and his engineer had a little tinker with the car, and his exact word to describe that tinker was atrocious. So clearly something to learn from there for Rowbottom. Obviously, it's a limited testing program for them as well. They're a completely new team. It is completely from scratch. It's a brand new car to the championship, to them. Everything has been done from the beginning, out of dust. So it was beyond fairy tale stuff at Donington. This was always going to happen, though, back down to earth with a bit of a bump at Brands. So yeah, Rowbottom, everyone still just trying to figure out what works in the car. So let's move on to the quali race, and it was Sutton that took the win. Yeah, De Leon second, Camish third, Collard fourth, Ingram fifth, then Morgan, Doble, Patterson, and then the two laser tools with MB Motorsport Toyotas of Taylor Smith and Gordon Shedden finished your top 10. Now we got to talk about lap 1, haven't we? Because Darryl De Leon was rather robust on Mr. Tom Ingram at Graham Hill Bend. I think looking at it, at first it looked like a completely reckless lunge down the inside, but on the replays it seems like it's more of a defence from the rapid starting Ash Sutton more than anything. And Darryl just sort of overcuts it and ends up down the inside of Ingram without knowing it. They both ran wide. Ingram dropped back and stayed there as well. I think he was, hobbling around a wounded car after that. So it was quite the shove out of the way from Darryl. I mean, he is a feisty racer, but I don't think there was any malice in that. Another thing to mention, 2 drivers that didn't finish in the top 10. One of which was Josh Cook, and he was fighting for top 10 until Puncher struck at Druids. I think it was front left, and it was rear left at Donington, if you remember, in race 1 at the chicane. My point here is basically, when will he get some good luck? When will he get the rub of the green? Because Josh Cook is, in my eyes, championship winning material, and he's shown that for a number of years now. He's never quite had that top level car. You look at your Virtues, your Nappas. He's never had that opportunity. He's always been in good cars, but he's had to extract insane amounts of pace from that car that he's got underneath him, and he just doesn't get any luck at all. 2 punches in 2 meetings early on in the weekend as well, which sets you back so much for the rest of it. It gives him so much to do, but yeah, he's a real warrior, is Josh. He'll keep fighting. He'll keep plucking away. So will the team at Toyota and Speedworks. But yeah, just when will the luck fall right for Josh? My final point is about Charles Rainford in the second of the WSR Beamers, and when he came into it last year, he was for me the most impressive rookie that we've seen in a long time. I know Daryl De Leon also picked up a win, so did Charles in the debut year, but in touring cars, you've got to strike a balance between when you decide to get those elbows out and when you decide that discretion is the better part of valor. And Charles, for me, is absolutely fantastic at that. And he showed it last year as well. He's able to judge scenarios and judge them spot on. He knows when to sort of give up the position because it's not worth fighting a losing battle. He knows when to stick his nose down the inside and ruffle some feathers. He's quick. His raw pace is there. He's a quick driver. I mean, obviously, we knew that from his years in Carrera Cup, but yeah, absolutely top driver. And getting stuck in, he got roughed up by Adam Morgan on lap 2 coming down the hill from Druids to Graham Hill. And then in rebuilding his race, he decided to get a retaliation on Plato Racing when he hopped up the curb at Paddock and knocked Robo into a bit of a slide, which was well held by Dan, but Rainford really not holding back in that one. But let's take it on to race 1, and your top 10 is as follows: Ash Sutton, Ricky Collard, you said Rob then, Ricky Collard, Tom Ingram, Dan Camish, Tom Chilton, Sam Osborne, really good showing from him in race 1 in 6th, and Mikey Doble 7th, Powermax Audi's looking absolutely mint, Chris Smiley 8th for restart, then the 2 BMWs of Rainford and De Leon round out your top 10. Early instant in race 1, it was slick tyres, rain just started, so a bit greasy, a bit treacherous on the opening. And Morgan had his off at Paddock. It's quite a heavy shunt as well, heavy impact into the barrier. At first, it didn't look like there was any other driver involved, but Dan Camish actually had nudged the back of the Mercedes and sent Morgan. The front's locked up, and he was a complete passenger at that point. So off into the gravel he went. Sutton versus Collard was an absolutely fantastic battle. They've raced each other in Formula 4. They go way back. They're good mates, and the respect they showed whilst racing as fierce as they did as well is what touring cars is all about, really. The pair traded positions many a time with Ingram and Camish just sort of waiting for it all to erupt, and with Ricky Collard involved in the battle, there was every chance it could have. Let's face it, but they didn't. They kept it clean and brought it home in first and second there. And in doing so, Ash Sutton bringing home his 50th career win. Obviously, he's on 4 titles. He's looking for the historic 5th, tied with Turks, Colin Turkington, and Andy Rouse. Obviously, two of the greats, and Sutton is one of the greats as well. Obviously, race 2 was the main talking point of the weekend, and my word, was it an absolute barnstormer of a race. It had everything you want in a touring car race. Complete drama. You know, the track. If you thought the track was greasy in race 1, it was absolutely sketchy in race 2, and absolute dream result for Aaron Taylor-Smith picking up the win from outside the top 10. It was absolutely insane. So it is ATS that took your win. Sutton second, Collard third, then Ingram. Aidan Moffat ploughed his way through the field there to 5th. Doughboy in the fellow Powermax Audi was 6th. Josh Cook 7th. James Dorlin, again, where did he come from in 8th? Obviously, starting the weekend with engine issues, so that's a medal result for James. Dexter Patterson 9th and Daryl De Leon with back-to-back 10ths. Race 2 really was a battle of survival. There was a number of sketchy moments and offs. Sutton had a couple of them up at clearways with Ingram, down the pitch straight with Rainford, as Rainford dived to the inside to try and claim the line for Paddock. Got into the rear of Ash, and David on comms described it as the mother and father of moments, and it's not a place where you not a place or a speed where you want to be having such a wobble. Let's say that. Cook and Camish both explored the gravel trap at Paddock. They found the limits there. Paddock was catching a few people out all weekend, actually. You literally just placing your car an inch too wide on the entry, and you would find yourself sideways in the gravel trap pretty quickly. It's the nature of a tricky Brands Hatch Indy circuit. But let's talk about Aaron Taylor-Smith then. He's one of the most hard-working drivers. He hasn't really found a home in the last couple of years over touring cars. He's been team hopping quite a bit, and the deal was done so early this year for him and Shedden. They were announced as the two Laser Tools Toyota Corolla racing drivers, and they both expressed their such confidence in their pre-season interviews, and because to have a deal put together so early gives you so much more time than other teams to concentrate on the car, on a testing program, and just get all the bits you need to fall into the right places. And it's paid off here. I mean, the conditions were so bad. Sutton could barely keep it on the track, and then Taylor Smith from outside the top 10 just drives past Sutton like he's an amateur, and drives off into the distance. It was a commanding drive from ATS, and we know what a driver he is. You could see when he was talking to Louise afterwards that the sheer relief that he felt, and there wasn't a man in the paddock that wasn't made up for Aaron, because he does put in so much work. And he was saying about his little girl. He's got a trophy for her now, a big trophy for her. And yeah, it just smiles all round. All round, Laser Tools. They worked so hard, all up and down the paddock. Yeah, it's a very, very popular victory, that was, for sure. Race 3 then. The reverse grid always delivers, doesn't it? Always delivers. And Tom Ingram finally getting his first win of the season. It should have come at Donington, but he didn't for a number of reasons. Ash Sutton second, Mikey Doble third, then Dowd Leon, Josh Cook, Adam Morgan was sixth, Gordon Shedden seventh, James Dorling eighth. He had reverse grid pole, and he did all right for a bit. Eventually, though, the floodgates did open. He was able to be a cork in the bottle for a decent amount of time. But then, as is the nature of touring cars, one driver passes you can get hung out to dry, and through they all come. And it was Taylor Smith and Moffat that completed your top 10. We got to talk about Ash Sutton again. Tim Harvey and David Allison in comms, they say it perfectly. There are no more superlatives to describe this man. And he's showing that at the start of this year with such consistency. He's leaving brands with a commanding points lead already after only the second weekend of the year. But in terms of this race alone, he started seventh and was alongside to James Dorling by Druids, which is unbelievable. The car was so hooked up off the line, it just drove past everyone on the outside. And then he was the latest of the late on the brakes. You could see the car like leap to the front, all the way leapt to the front as he slammed on the brakes to pull level with James Dorling, who in fairness showed him the edge of the road and was making sure that he wasn't going to do that. He wasn't going to get to the lead quite so easily. But it's your typical race 3, overtakes aplenty. Ingram with the win. It was Team Virtue's 100th podium as a collective. And what a fantastic team they are. They just go from strength to strength every year. It looks like Ash Sutton's going to be a bit more of a threat than he was last year with the new titanium Ford. But they're just such a top outfit in the championship. And yeah, 100th podium. There'll be many more to come. Championship standings then, leaving the weekend. Sutton with 129 leads, Ingram on 82. So yeah, it's a sturdy lead, isn't it? But it's British touring cars. You can guarantee you that won't be that healthy, that comfortable for Ash for very long. Mikey Doble leaves Brands Hatch in third after just consistently strong showings across Donington and Brands Hatch. Yeah, Mr. Underrated really in terms of the grid. He's very quiet. When Louise interviews, he's just happy to go about his business and he gets the job done. And in touring cars, that's a really handy skill to have. You just go under the radar, and then before you know it, you're fighting for podiums and good results. And Mikey's been doing that for a couple of years now. Ricky Collard leaves the championship, leaves the Brands Hatch in fourth in the championship, which is absolutely phenomenal, really, given the lack of time he's had in the car. Dan Camish fifth, Aidan Moffat sixth, Aaron Taylor Smith, Charles Rainford, Dowd Leon, and Gordon Shedden round out your top 10. So WSR and Laser Tools there quite matched. Overall points for the weekend. Sutton, absolutely incredible as always. Power Max showing some real promise again, coming off the back of promise at Donington. It's back down to earth with a bump for Plato Racing. That was to be expected though. It's British touring cars, not everything's plain sailing. But they'll bounce back. Snetterton, the Saloon, it could be a good track for them, I think. So I think, I think Morgan goes well around Snetterton. I'm not sure Robo's had quite the results there though in previous years. Collard's promise for the rest of the season. I'm really excited to see what he can do throughout the remainder of the year now. And finally, the main talking point for the weekend, Laser Tools in absolute dreamland. Absolute dreamland. In terms of the Independent Drivers' Championship, that's led by the two Paramax Audis of Mikey Doble and Aidan Moffat. And then Jack Sears Trophy is led by Restart Racing's James Dorling, who I think is one to watch this year to steadily creep up on the rest of the pack and get some strong results. So that wraps up touring cars for Brands Hatch. On to Snetterton, completely different beast than Brands Hatch is. So I'll be interested to see what happens there. Let's move on to Carrera Cup Great Britain now then, a championship that, as always, delivers some fierce racing. I very much enjoy it. However, grid size, a classic issue in motorsport, and I do feel that Porsche Carrera Cup would very much benefit from a bit of a bigger grid. I'm hoping with the introduction of the new 992.2 Cup car next year from 2027 that might attract some more people to come over and have a look at the championship. If you look at the likes of Carrera Cup Germany, Carrera Cup Benelux, Carrera Cup Italia as well, which I'll get to later with Callum Voisin. Their grids are absolutely incredible, filled with young talent, proven talent. It's a real mixed bag across Europe, and I do feel that Carrera Cup Great Britain could benefit from a grid size similar to that. However, let's get into the weekend then. This was the first weekend where they had 2 qualifying sessions because the absence of the Sprint Challenge Championship allows that slot for the Saturday schedule for them to do an extra qualifying session. So a bit more jeopardy in a way there. And at a track like Brands Hatch, you need to try and get some track space and optimise that as best you can. So Q1 then was topped by Will Jenkins, and unsurprisingly, Callum Voisin wasn't too far behind in second. Then Max Coates, Stephen Jelly, and Isaac Phelps round out your top 5. I do, though, want to touch on Jonathan Moore in 6th. Won his class in Sprint Challenge last year. Step up this, I mean, it was his first year in Sprint Challenge, so to jump straight up to Carrera Cup is quite a big step after just spending the 1 year in the Caymans. But taking to it well, Donington was a steady showing. No, didn't disgrace himself, kept it on the track, kept it clean. But this was a good showing of pace here in Q1. Another thing I want to mention is Sid Smith. Now, I tipped him to be the champion come the end of this year, and he still could be, but another poor qualifying, and Donington was the same. So that's a bit concerning for Sid there. He'll be very disappointed that he started his season so poorly in qualifying. He's given himself a lot to do in the races. On to Q2, and it was the top 2 reversed. Callum Voisin now took pole position for race 2, followed by Will Jenkins, and then the very impressive Jacob Toffs, who was only 10th in Q1, but then P3 in Q2. Absolutely fantastic to see from Jacob. It's 2 young guns there, Jonathan Moore, Jacob Toffs, really showing their class in Carrera Cup early doors. Ollie Jackson was 4th, and Stephen Jelly 5th. So consistent showing in qualifying there from Stephen Jelly, which is good to see. I'll touch on him a little bit again later. So let's look at race 1's results then. First point, Callum Voisin. Now, Formula 3 race winner, let's not forget. Spa-Francorchamps, he picked up a win. He got a podium somewhere else as well. To come across the Carrera Cup Great Britain was unexpected for me when it was announced. It was very unexpected because I genuinely saw him climbing the ladder. I saw F2 as the next step for Voisin. And so yeah, this did surprise me a little bit. However, the shift from single-seaters to GT-style racing is an option that many drivers are choosing to take these days. So Voisin following that footsteps. And he's pretty dominant if we look at this. Yeah, his margins that he's winning by as well. He's not just winning, he's winning comfortably. Will Jenkins is his closest competition at the minute. I think Sid Smith, if he was to sort his qualifying out, would be. But at the minute, it is Will Jenkins. And I think in terms of driver development for Voisin, this probably isn't great. He'd enjoy a bit more of a scrap in races. I think that's why Porsche Carrera Cup Italia is going to be such a benefit for Callum. think he was at Imola for the opening round, if I remember rightly. I was watching that on the YouTube stream. Don't think he was at Misano. That might have been the clash with Great Britain, Carrera Great Britain, which he's going to prioritise because there could be a trophy coming his way at the end of the season. But Carrera Italia, and he's in the mid pack there. He's not one of the front runners because that's a very, it's a tricky championship. There's some very established Carrera Cup drivers. I think Andrea Bristot is currently leading the way. You've got Pietro Deli Guanti, a couple of young chargers, but with more experience in the car than Voisin has. So I think he'll really benefit from being pushed that bit further in Carrera Cup Italia. So yeah, Will Jenkins was second. Stephen Jelly on the podium. Now that is something you like to see. Max Coates fourth, and Jack Sherwood charging from 8th to 5th. Sid Smith, 9th. However, he was 6th by the end of the first lap, as far as I'm aware. But the pesky track limits penalty came Smith's way. So he ended up dropping down to 9th. Isaac Phelps was also a victim of track limits penalty. He crossed the line in 7th, but would finish 10th. DNFs, though, for Jonathan Moore. A real shame after such a strong qualifying. This was an instance at Clearways. I think it was Isaac Phelps trying to stick the nose up the inside. Just a little brush. It wasn't heavy contact at all, but a little brush is all it takes to unsettle the Carrera Cup car. And yeah, he was not getting out of the Clearways gravel trap anytime soon. And then Michael Keohane is... I remember Dave and Tim saying on comms that first 3 races of the season and Michael had DNF'd all 3 of them, which was a real shame. The Irishman, I remember Tim and David again saying that it was his first season in 20 years. But he looks racy, and he showed that in race 2 when he didn't have gremlins with his car or was a little bit wild off the start like he was at Donington. So that's race 1. On to race 2, and it was another Callum Voisin win, another relatively comfortable win as well. Sid Smith this time finally getting a good chunk of points on the board with a P2. Jacob Toffs P3, Will Jenkins P4, and Isaac Phelps in P5. So that's 3 out of 4 race wins for Callum Voisin now, 1 going to Will Jenkins at Donington. So he's done the double at Brands. It's pretty ominous for his competitors, let's put it that way. Sid Smith's going to have a lot to do if he wants to catch up with this. Will Jenkins, Isaac Phelps, the young lad for stepping up from GB4. He'd done Janetta Juniors, was very impressive there. Not quite able to challenge Voisin yet. I'm hoping towards the end of the season we could see a bit more of a Rosalind Gold 1-2 battle. But at the minute he's not quite there. One driver I want to pick up on that. He finished 12th in this race, Jack Sherwood. Now, he's another driver that's been doing campaigns elsewhere. I've seen him at Monza doing Porsche Carrera Cup Suisse, I think. And very, very aggressive driver. It's fantastic to see. The championship needs drivers like this. You look at Ricky Collard in British Touring Cars. What a great welcome back he's been. Jack Sherwood is a fantastic addition to Carrera Cup because he adds that bit of bite, that bit of needle that is so brilliant to watch. There's a moment in race 2 where he tried to move on Ollie Jackson around the outside at Clearways, and Ollie was having none of it and just showed him the edge of the road, and Jack was bouncing through the gravel, through the grass, back onto the tarmac, and it was, he's just brilliant viewing. And then finishing 7th in this one, Stephen Jelly, another thing I wanted to pick out. Now, he's obviously racing the Pro-Am class, as is Ollie Jackson by choice, and I do feel he's a bit too respectful. If I'm not saying ram people out of the way, but there's a few times in race 2 I just felt he could have got his elbows out a little bit more because he's battling with Ollie Jackson for class honours, and sometimes you need that car buffer between you. So I think if he was in front of a pro driver, say Isaac Phelps, and he just sort of let Phelps through, wouldn't really defend, but then in doing that, Phelps would hand him out to dry, and Ollie Jackson would be on him like a rash instantly. So I think he just needs to get his elbows out a little bit more, Stephen. And he'll probably realise that himself. And whether I'm being harsh here, P7, still a good result. P3 in class, because Jacob Toff's got an overall podium, of course. But yeah, that would be my one little thing to say there. So if we look now at the championship points leaving the weekend, unsurprisingly, top in pro is Callum Voisin, followed by Will Jenkins, and Max Coates is 3rd, which is good to see from Max. Had a bit of a quiet weekend at Brands. He was a bit more involved in the action at Donington, but still solid showing nonetheless. Pro-Am is tight, as you'd expect. Ollie Jackson leads that by 5 points to Stephen Jelly. And then Jacob Toft's closing the gap there with an overall podium and class win in race 2. As for the AMs, it's Carl Cavers, mostly because Michael Keohane hasn't been crossing the line. He did in race 2 and came across the line in 11th in front of Jack Sherwood and Ollie Meadows and indeed Carl Cavers. So I think Michael Keohane will eventually catch up to Carl Cavers if he keeps up this pace that he shows and is able to avoid any gremlins that come his way. Henry Dawes is second in the AM at the minute. He wasn't absent at Brands. I'm not entirely sure what the reason was for that, but he was not there. One final thing to mention is a bit of a shame because on the entry list going into the weekend was Eden Motorsport and Matty Graham. And Matty Graham he's done many years of Carrera Cup, real front runner, real charger. And with a team like Eden Motorsport, who obviously enjoyed success last year with Will Martin, I do feel that would have been a great addition to the weekend. However, that was not to be because they withdrew before the weekend started. Again, I'm not entirely sure what the reason was for that, but I was checking the entry list, saw that there was a second version, and yeah, found that Matty Graham was not on it. Neither was Eden Motorsport. Hopefully, they will be later on in the season for both Eden Motorsport and Matty Graham. I think they'd be a fantastic package, really do. Bit more of a competition for Cannon Boys as well, which is exactly what we like to see. Mini challenge time now then, and I'll try and keep it short from here because the video will otherwise last forever. But yeah, in terms of mini challenge, I think it is an absolutely fantastic championship. Provides a brilliant platform, that stepping stone for BTCC, for drivers to be able to perfect their racecraft and hopefully, be prepared for whatever they choose to go on to next, whether that is BTCC or some other top tier motorsport championships out there. Yeah, it's just a fantastic one make championship. All the racing's close because it's one make, so you've got close racing wherever you look. As I'll talk about in a minute with these 3 races at Brands. So yeah, let's hop into mini challenge qualifying, and a bit of a story with this one. 3 cars were disqualified for tyre infringements, which is not something you see every day, is it? All 3 under the Accelerate umbrella as well. So for a top team to be making a mistake like that, it just shows you how easy it is. When you're running a multi-car outfit like they do, yeah, it just shows you how easy these mistakes are. Tom Ovenden, the reigning champ, was one of those cars disqualified after such a dominant opener at Donington, taking all 3 race wins. He was pushed for it. He had to fight for it, but still came out on top. Did Tom. Nathan Edwards was another one. He had a miserable year last season. Just horrible issues with the car that just persisted. Didn't go away. He had a couple of strong showings when the pace, the pace was clearly there. He's a very quick driver, but the car was not compliant for the majority of the year, unfortunately. And then the third driver and the most probably devastated driver of the 3 was Josh Porter, because it would have been his maiden pole position in the minis. So he'll be gutted with that. To be able to put it on pole at a track like Brands Indy, you've been made to work for that pole position with the short nature of the circuit. You've got to find as much track space as you can and optimize it. You really do. So he'll have been, absolutely heartbroken with that. But still a good weekend for Porter, as we'll see in a minute. But those 3 disqualifications meant that Max Edmondson for Pro Alloys was on pole, Harry Hickton second, Olivier Algieri third, and Alex Solly, Henry Howarth on his JCW debut in 5th, and Sam Dornell, Harry Campy, Charlie Hand, Will Crooks, and Cam Richardson rounding out your top 10. If we move straight into race 1 then, and it was Max Edmondson who picked up the win, with Harry Hickton second, then Charlie Hand was third, Joe Tanner 4th, Harry Campy 5th, Tom Ovenden 6th, Josh Porter 7th, Algieri 8th, Owen Hillman 9th, and Alex Solly 10th. With race 1 not being on the broadcast, I don't really have many talking points here, but what I can tell you is that Tom Ovenden finished 6th and started 19th, so that is a mega effort to carve your way through the field like that in such a competitive field as well. That's a top drive there from Tom, but we'd expect nothing less from the returning champ, of course. Josh Porter behind him in 7th, so the pair of them worked their way through the field really nicely. Nathan Edwards was the only one that didn't make the top 10 there of those 3 that were DQ'd in qualifying. Let's talk about Max Edmondson then, shall we? Race 1 winner. I've followed him for a few years now in Civic Cup, and another one-make championship, another fiercely competitive one-make championship as well. And he came out on top in title battles with the likes of Josh Files, who's, you know, TCR Europe master, been off in Europe doing many a championship. So shows you the level of driver that Max is to be able to come out on top of that battle with Josh. But yeah, Civic Cup, the lad's fearless. You know, he's got thrusts and he's getting it sideways, you know, 90 degrees at Church Corner, 90 degrees at Old Hall Corner, Old Hairpin, you name it. He's just fearless, flinging it round every bend. He's the Ash Sutton of the support package. You know, just able to extract things out of a car that a car shouldn't be able to do. He is championship winning material for the minis. Potentially even championship winning material for British touring cars in the future. I would definitely say that. I mean, I would love to see him in the BTCC. I think he'd fit in absolutely perfectly. Who else should we talk about? Let's have a look. Harry Hitton, we'll talk about him in a second because he had a monumental shunt at Brands GP at the end of last year, which wrote the car off entirely. He had to get a completely new shell, new build, which I think Lewis Selby actually gifted him a shell, which was great to see. Head over to Harry's YouTube, actually, Harry Hitton Racing and the Road to Rebuild series. Documented all the behind the scenes goings on of literally rebuilding the car and getting to the grid for this year, which was obviously, you know, nothing's ever guaranteed in the best of circumstances, let alone when you've had such a big accident at the end of a year. So for Harry to be back on the grid and up the front, mixing it with the fast guys is fantastic. Now, you know what? Let's move on to race 2. We'll pick up on a couple of people in a minute. Race 2 then, and it was Tom Ovenden back to normality, with the win there. And Algieri second, Max Edmondson completes your podium. Josh Porter 4th, Charlie Hand 5th, Nathan Edwards 6th, Owen Hillman, 2 top 10s there for Owen, that's good. Joe Tanner 8th, Sam Dornell 9th, and Harry Hitton was 10th. It's worth mentioning that this race was stopped because of 2 separate incidents on lap 1. Murray Richardson in the sport category looped it on his own at paddock, ended up in the gravel. And then Anthony Sullivan, not entirely sure how he ended up off at Druids, but he was up against the barrier with a bit of a crunched front end. So that brought a halt to proceedings. And then on the restart, the main talking point is the battle at the front, because Algieri led the race until the very last lap, where Ovenden was just that bit braver on the brakes into paddock and got the move done. But Tom said afterwards in his interview with Louise, you know, Olivier was placing the car in all the right positions around the circuit and made it very, very hard to get past there. Tom definitely earned that win, because it wasn't easy. And Algieri, it's his debut season. You know, he's a rookie coming up from the Coopers. You know, that mini ladder working absolutely fantastically, and this is a prime example of that. Algieri was able to fight with Tom all the way to the flag, which is amazing. So watch out for him in the future. You know, definitely he'll be in the title mix this year. You know, you've got to say off the back of Strong Donington as well, Strong Brands. I think he'll be in the mix come the end of the year. And then just in terms of the minis in general, you know, the whole field was so competitive. If it wasn't these two battling, you had a fierce one behind with Edmondson, Porter, Hand. You know, it was fantastic. It was greasy conditions again, just starting to rain. That sort of that light dampness to the track, making everyone question themselves going into turn 1 every lap, with conditions being that slight bit different. Race 3 was another belter as well. The conditions were even harder. This was more like the race 2 conditions for touring cars. So everyone was tiptoeing their way around. And it was nearly a Pro Alloys 1, 2, 3, which if you saw my bingo card that I posted, I actually went with the Pro Alloys podium lockout at some point across the weekend. And Olivier Algieri stopped that from happening, because it was Edmondson Dornell as a 1, 2 for Pro Alloys. Algieri was 3rd and Alex Solly was 4th. So very nearly a square on my bingo ticked off there. You had Harry Hitton in 5th, Henry Howarth 6th, Charlie Hand 7th, Nathan Edwards 8th, Tom Ovenden 9th, and Harry Campy 10th. What can we talk about here then? Again, Max Edmondson, brilliant pace. Sam Dornell coming across from Clio Cup Europe. That's a very, very aggressive series. You know, drivers don't take any prisoners over there. So he's got a good year European experience under his belt. I'm sure that's something that many drivers would look to do, actually. You know, going race at some top tracks. Spa-Francorchamps, I think, is on the Clio Cup calendar. Monza, Imola, Nogaro in France. It's a fantastic championship. I would recommend watching it. But Sam Dornall opting for a domestic season this year. He's done the Coopers before, but now joining Pro Alloys for a title charge, it must be said. It's fantastic to see. Henry Howarth with a 6th in race 3, impressing on his return to the championship, but his debut in the JCWs. Him and Archie Johnson had a fierce battle for the JCW Sport Honours, which went Archie's way at the last weekend of the season. But Johnson not having the luck really, involved in that big shunt with Charlie Hand at Donington, and now he got taken out in race 3 as well, coming through Clark Curve onto the straight. So yeah, very unfortunate for him. Lack of numbers in JCW Sport. Obviously, we'd love to see a few more there, but the JCW strength in numbers makes up for that, I suppose. Richard and Paul on comms always saying how well Ria Beauchamp and the team at Mini do to get this championship in such a good place, and this year it is in a fantastic place. It's really, really strong. So yeah, top work from the guys at Mini. And let's look at the championship points and leaving the weekend. Tom Ovenden is leading the way, but only by 11 points to Max Edmondson. So yeah, watch out for Max. And Algieri in 3rd as well. And it's Harry Hicton, Sam Dornall, Alex Solly, Charlie Hand, Nathan Edwards, Harry Campy, and Joe Tanner for Napa Racing completes your top 10. Next time we'll see these minis, it is indeed at Snetterton, and it will be the TOCA Mini Festival they're calling it, because it's the first time ever we see both the JCWs and the rapid little Mini Coopers as well. So yeah, much to look forward to in terms of Snetterton. Last but by no means least, then we have the Vera Tools British Formula 4 Championship. And yes, change of location on this one because we're having a bit of a scorcher at the moment, so my room is absolutely boiling. So I'm in a nice cool kitchen for this. I'm going to do this one a bit differently as well because of the complicated nature of Formula 4's qualifying format. And they do qualifying second fastest times, reverse grid nature, all that jazz. So I'm just going to pop the race grids up in the edit, the starting grids for each race, and we'll just talk straight about the race results. So race 1 then, Ethan Jeff Hall was your winner, Adam Alazari 2nd, and Tommy Harfield 3rd. Theo Palmer was 4th with Lewis Werrell, impressive rookie this season, in 5th. Jarrett Clark 6th, Dries van Langendonk 7th, Scott Lindblom 8th, Ethan Lennon and George Proudford completes your top 10. And the first thing I'm going to do here is actually not talk about British Formula 4. I'm going to talk about Ginetta Juniors, because I think that is seemingly a brilliant feeder series, a brilliant breeding ground for British F4 talent these days. If we look at race 1's results, race 1 winner, Ethan Jeff Hall, former Ginetta Junior champion. Jarrett Clark also did juniors, as did Scott Lindblom last year, Ethan Lennon last year, George Proudford last year. So it's seemingly a good little link up, these two championships. And I think it's really good as well for drivers because, yes, it's great to have fresh competition as you advance into new formulas. But I think to be able to continue battles with, old rivals or old teammates, just people that you've known for a while, can be really beneficial just to help, ease you in. I mean, these drivers are the same age as me, and I'm older than some of them as well, actually, which is frightening. But I'm thinking if I was in the car, I'd very much, appreciate having some familiar faces knocking about the paddock, if you're exploring a new venture. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a lovely little link between these two championships now, and long may it continue. This race was actually brought to a halt on lap 2. A couple of incidents around the circuit, one at Druids, one at Clearways. The one at Clearways involved Kit Belowski in the Fortec car. The one at Druids was your classic open wheel accident at Druids, really. Side by side on the exit, wheel to wheel contact, sent the one car into the barrier. Decent enough hit. All was okay though, thankfully, but with a couple of cars stranded across the circuit, the race officials made the smart call of red flagging it, bringing it to an early end, so we could get more green flag racing on the resumption over a prolonged safety car period, which is exactly what the fans want. So good decision there. Race 2, and it was Jarrett Clark from Cash Felber. Cash Felber, the American, one of the two brothers, Roman, not having as good a start to the season as Cash is Roman. But hopefully towards the end of the year, we'll see him having some good battles there with his twin brother, I hear. I think they're pretty identical as well. So if you're wandering about in the paddock looking for one of them, you're going to have a nightmare telling the difference. Anyway, it was Jabba Al-Sabah in 3rd. Tommy Harfield 4th, ahead of Timo Jundling there, the German rookie. Lewis Werrell 6th. Dries van Langendonk 7th. Joseph Smith 8th. Theo Palmer 9th. And Ethan Jeff Hall, race 1 winner, completes your top 10. And this race was a prime example of the competitive field we've got this year. You know, loads of impressive rookies, impressive returning drivers, massive grid, over 30 cars. It's the most excited I've been for a single-seater season of British F4 in a long time because of that. And yeah, you know, there's fierce battles all the way down the order, literally, you know, for the positions in the late 20s. It is still fiercely, competed. And race 3 then, and this was a good test of drivers' instincts. Do they gamble, pit for wets, or do they gamble and stay out on slicks? It's a gamble either way, isn't it? But one you've got to take. Andries van Langendonk absolutely nailed it and took the win. Kit Wilowski was second. Cole Hewitson third. Ethan Carney, another example of Ginetta Junior graduates there, in fourth. Tommy Harfield fifth. Chiara Batig with the Red Bull livery is sixth. Vedar Clementson seventh. Adam Alazari eighth. Your mate and mine, Mate Kobakidze in ninth, and Joseph Smith in 10th. Let's talk about Dries then, shall we? Dries van Langendonk. Is he F1 bound? With the McLaren backing, the McLaren livery he's already got, with a name like Dries van Langendonk, you would not be surprised to see in F1, would you? He was British F4's youngest ever winner last year when he debuted at Donington Park, the GP circuit, and won there. Formula Winter Series champion for 2026 as well. He is an absolute weapon behind the wheel, is the Belgian maestro, Dries. So one to watch in the future, definitely. You know, British F4, it showed that it is very much part of the ladder to make your way to Formula One. Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, you know, two drivers that are doing a fine job, aren't they, right now? And they have all experienced a season in British Formula 4. So yeah, Dries van Langendonk, yeah, the name to watch out for going forwards, I'm sure of that. Whether it's F1 or some other elite level motorsport, I can almost assure you there. Chiara Battista, yes, that's my next point. Another positive, another plus with the British F4 Championship right now is it's seemingly a fantastic opportunity for females, for women to get into the sport and in a competitive championship as well. You look at Abby Pulling, won at Brands Hatch. Ella Lloyd has enjoyed success as well in F4. Alba Larson did F4 last season. She's in F1 Academy this year. And now Chiara Battista, and she's got a top 10 finish here as well in race 3 at Brands. It's another plus side to this very positive British Formula 4 season. And yeah, the championship's in a really good place right now. Really good place. Onwards and upwards for F4. You know, it's a multinational grid as well. We're attracting drivers from all over the world. So yeah, very exciting to see what the rest of the season offers. Championship points then, leaving Brands. Dries van Langendonk somewhat unsurprisingly leads that one. Ethan Jeffall second, Tommy Harfield third, Scott Lindblom fourth, Joseph Smith fifth, Theo Palmer sixth, Kit Belofsky seventh, then Jarrett Clark, Adam Alazari, and Lewis Werrell. Dries van Langendonk leads the Rookie Cup as well from Jabba Al Sabah, Lewis Werrell, Mate Kobakidze, and Cameron Nelson. And the hotly contested Teams Championship, Rodin lead High Tech, lead Virtuosi. You look at those three teams have pedigree in, you know, higher up level single seater racing as well in lots of Formula 2 and Formula 3. So yeah, the drivers very much want to bring it home for the team as well. Bit of bragging rights definitely for them. And with that concludes my F4 roundup and indeed the TOCA roundup for Brands Hatch. I know this one's been a bit short for F4. I'll try and give them some more time for Snetterton, but I didn't want this one to drag, otherwise the video will last forever. But yeah, with that, if you could give me a cheeky like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated. Much to look forward to in terms of Snetterton, and you know, for the whole package, we'll be joined by the Virtue Mini Challenge Trophy. F4 will be there as well, as with the Porsches. F4, actually, yeah, a quick mention as well. F4 are going to have a couple of their away days soon. Silverstone Grand Prix, and then their trip abroad to the Netherlands for Circuit Zandvoort, which is another great opportunity for these drivers to gain some Grand Prix circuit experience. You know, it's all well and good doing Brands Indy and Thruxton and circuits like that, but at the end of the day, these guys are on the ladder to F1. So, yeah, valuable experience at a track like Circuit Zandvoort. And again, another brilliant thing that this championship does. You know, it's a fantastic platform, it really is. So yeah, with that, that's the Brands Roundup done. We look forward to Snetterton. If you could like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated. The plan is to do one of these roundups for every weekend for the rest of the season now. So keep an eye out for them. But until then, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.